Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with talented modern-day alto saxophonist Sarah Manning. She grew up on the East Coast in Connecticut, got her career going in the San Francisco Bay Area, and has returned to the East Coast to New York City. She talked about her latest album, Harmonious Creature, and how it was created in a fusion of music and nature. Along with her dreams as a child, her jazz heroes, the first autograph she ever gave out, along with much, much more. Please dig this interview, my friends.
And what I want to do is, before I get to Harmonious Creature, I want to ask, what has been going on with you lately?
Well, I moved back to New York. I spent a couple of years away from the city. I've been doing that thing that is possible in New York like nowhere else, which is to explore a lot of different bands and projects. And so I've been actually spending a lot more time on the improvised music scene, playing a few completely improvised shows. Just put together a new band with some new material that I'm hoping to record in the next year.
So let's talk about Harmonious Creature. Talk to me a little bit about the creative process that went into this album. It's very unique. You feel as though when I was going into this album that you're getting kind of this straight-ahead jazz album. You're getting this, but there was so many things going on. There was such a cascade of sound that was happening with all of this. Kind of song one all the way to the last song kind of was a journey. So give me a little bit of an idea of what went into this album and how you feel about it.
This album was sparked, a lot of it was sparked by my experience at the McDowell Colony, which is an artist colony in Peterborough, New Hampshire. When I was in New York before, I had been here for 3.5 years, and the city can be really hard for artists. It's great. The community is probably the number one reason to be here, the community of other artists. It's easy to get caught up in and lost in the difficulty of kind of making a living and all that kind of thing. And so my experience at McDowell was probably really important in terms of just feeling like a composer and a saxophonist, because in New York sometimes, even though it's the heart of the jazz world in many ways, it can be hard to kind of just feel like you're out there doing it every day and being the artist that you want to be. And so McDowell actually gave me a couple of weeks in a studio in the woods, and they provided all my meals, and they basically gave me the opportunity to just live there and do nothing but eat, sleep, and breathe music for the first time in my entire life, where that was something that was the only assignment that I had. Yeah, and I think it really influenced the record in certain ways because instead of being in the city environment, I was in that open space, and I was able to be around animals, and which are very important to me. There's a coyote and porcupine and even a yellow-spotted salamander. And a bear, so while I was there. So
cool.
I think that influenced the music. Specifically, there's a tune on there called What the Blues Left Behind, and it's kind of an old gospel blues type tune, and it's like something I never would have written in any other environment, but it happened to come into my head in that space, and I think I was very influenced by that.
You said you grew up on the East Coast. Was it in New York that you grew up specifically?
No, I grew up in New England, in Connecticut, in northwest Connecticut, and I started my career on the West Coast, and felt a pull in New York and came back here. Now I've returned to New York about 1.5 years ago. So
what was it like growing up in Connecticut, where you were, to kind of foster a love of music, and more specifically your passion, which is jazz?
Well, I have to thank my dad for a lot of that. My dad is a huge music fan, and he actually used to take me to record conventions. He had tons of records, and we would go to this, I think, like a Marriott or, like an old hotel convention lobby kind of thing where people were selling records. He played all sorts of music for me, including film music and jazz music, both of which have had a really strong influence on me. And he actually used to tape the scores off of movies, so he would take a movie that would show on television, and he would use cassette tape to tape the score. And then when we would go on a road trip or something, we would listen to it. So I actually oftentimes listened to a score with dialogue at the same time, which was really cool. And then the other advantage of being in Connecticut was actually, Torrington itself is kind of a small factory or small mill town. West Hartford and Hartford are not too far away, and Jackie McLean actually was teaching at the Artist Collective in Hartford when I was in high school, and I got a chance to participate in a jazz band there. Well, so that leads to the next thing. We're from Kansas City. Charlie Parker had to be a huge influence in the way you approach the saxophone as well. Yeah, of course. I mean, I was probably one of the few teenagers with a a downbeat T-shirt that said with Charlie Parker on it when I was like maybe 15 that said, if you don't live it, it won't come out of your horn. So, of course, I listened to a lot of Charlie Parker and studied the Omni book was one of the first things that I kind of like looked over with a teacher and tried to learn how to conceptualize, what he was doing. And, for every saxophonist, when you hear Charlie Parker for the first time, it's kind of like, how can you do all that? That's amazing. Yeah. You're doing so many different things. But at the same time, one of the things that Charlie Parker has is such a strong vocabulary. It's all his own. And so that, I think, it's been an influence in the sense that, all of us are looking to try to find our own voice and path in the music and to pay respect and be influenced by the people that came before us, but at the same time to develop our own language and vocabulary. And with Charlie Parker, his vocabulary is so clearly his own. It's a whole language.
Why did you pick the alto sax?
There's a simple sort of mistake reason that happened, which was that originally I interviewed saxophonist Paul Winter for a school project. He lived in Connecticut, and he's a soprano saxophonist known for kind of world music, some Brazilian music, and doing things like having whales and wolf sounds in his music. So I was really fascinated by this, and I wanted to play soprano because I idolized Paul Winter. You can't rent a soprano from the music store. So that's how I ended up with alto. And then after that, I kind of fell in love with it in the sense that I don't play other horns. I don't play tenor. I've picked up a tenor and played it a few times in my life. I specialize and focus completely on the alto.
So when you were growing up, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
I had lots of different ones. Every year I had different ideas. I was really into astronomy, and I love animals, so I wanted to have a goat for a while. And then I don't know if that was really a career so much. I think that once I fell in love with music, that was what I wanted to do. I had a very clear idea from when I was a freshman in high school that I wanted to come to New York and play in the jazz clubs and, I don't know, live the jazz life, whatever that means.
Yeah. Well, and you've bounced between the coasts. So explain to me how you started kind of getting your jazz on, so to speak, in the San Francisco Bay Area. How did you get from Connecticut to Frisco and back to New York?
Well, I went out to San Francisco Bay Area. I had been out there a couple of times to visit and loved it. It's an amazing place. There's that really strong connection between the natural world and the city, the Bay Area, because you can go not very far outside of San Francisco or up into the hills of Oakland or Berkeley and be in surroundings where you can see great horned owls, and you go out an hour on the coast and you can see whales. And so that was a big draw for me. And when I got there, I was a couple of years out of school, and I surrounded myself with, I tried to find the musicians that could really change my playing for the better. And I actually had this really prophetic dream. I studied with Rufus Reed, the amazing bass player and great human, in college and at William Patterson College. And I had a dream that he told me that I needed to go out and play with people that could really just, kick my butt. And in the dream, he gave me a bicycle. He said that, even if I needed to go different places or, I guess, ride around on this bicycle, travel to do so, that's what I needed to do. And it's kind of funny because I ended up in the Bay Area, and through Rufus Reed, I was able to connect with a Kidatana drummer, and he agreed to play with me, and I found some players that played with him, and they really taught me so much about playing in an ensemble.
Let me ask you this. What was your first jazz experience like? Like bona fide gig, you're on stage. How did you feel?
I don't know if I remember my very first time on stage in a concert setting that was my own group or anything like that. I do remember sitting in a lot. I used to go to this place called Nature in West Hartford, and Chris Allen, who's a notable alto player on the East Coast, and Jimmy Green, tenor player, they were there too. They were part of that scene at the time. They were my peers, and so I just remember the excitement of just like listening to them and listening to the tunes they were playing, and then feeling like, yeah, I'm going to get up and play a set with them. Like oftentimes Jimmy would be really sweet to me and let me play like the entire last set with the band. And it was just a culmination of all the things I'd been listening to and working on at home, and the ability to go up there and to kind of take chances on stage, I think was just really thrilling.
Speaking of on stage, what's it like to play at Yoshi's?
It was great. It was a dream of mine when I moved to the Bay Area. I said I'm going to play Yoshi's within 5 years, and I actually did it. I was able to do it sooner. I only played there twice. It's a great room, and there's so much history of great players that have come through there. So I think that it's a real concert venue, and it's also got that unique thing where the one in Oakland, which is the only one that I've played, there's the train that goes by outside, and you can feel the train, but you can't hear it.
How do you feel about your career up to this point? You've had a lot that's happened. You've been around geographically. You've been releasing albums. How do you feel about your career at this point?
Well, I think I'm not unlike most artists today, which is that more than ever, it's solidified for me that music is my life, but at the same time, there are a lot of challenges and realities that we have to face today as artists. And so I'm trying to find a way to look at the challenges we face, one of them being that, with the downfall of physical CDs is something that artists can really sell, and you can go online and buy an album in many, many places for free. Illegal pirate sites and things like that. And the fact that it's hard to get people out to shows, and the arts have taken a big hit in this country. I think that as I get older, I am reminded more and more of the importance of why we're in this music, and that's about the community and about sharing with other people. And we all feel that we have something to say that's meaningful, and that maybe that's the best way we can be in this world and offer what we have to share, and that just takes the perseverance and, again, being around other people that share those same values.
As someone that's on the other side of this, not as a musician, but as one that's kind of documenting and trying to highlight the jazz musicians that are out there, I think it's hardest for me to hear people like Chuck Israels and those that are older that are like, I don't know what's going to happen to this. I'm afraid for jazz. But I also interviewed someone from New York. His name is Joe Benjamin. He's from Germany. He talks about how the government subsidizes arts over there. And I'm more and more thinking that there has to be some level of intervention in this country for us to understand that the mental health of the people is directly dependent on something like music. And that it has to be, it's like you said, your whole purpose when you made that album was that you were alone in nature, and the only thing that you did was created music, and I think that's very important to be supported by some kind of funding source in this country, because it's vital, it's beautiful, it gives people so much hope and promise in their lives to hear this music that's being made. So,
Well, thank you for saying that. One of the things that we can do is just as artists is to help each other out. And, I know that it's very easy for artists to kind of look around and say, well, that musician's playing this venue, and how come they got this gig? I should have gotten that gig. And in an industry where there's so little to go around, people tend to be pitted against each other. But in reality, what we should be saying is like, congratulations, it's so great that you got that funding or that grant or that performance, but we need more of these things because there are so many voices that need to be heard. And I think it's really important in our times for artists artists have always been at the forefront of social movements and change. And the history of jazz is a great reason. That is the history of jazz. I think that's essential for social progress.
Coming from New York City, the hotbed, the hotbed of jazz, what is the greatest thing about being in New York for you?
For me, it's the community of musicians being able to have so many different people that you can go out and hear and then collaborate with. I think that that's something that you don't find really anywhere else that I've been. You can go out on any night of the week and see people in an intimate space that were heroes for you or idols or people that you'd love to learn from. It's a relatively small community. And I think there can be a lot of openness between players that are older who are willing to take a chance on your music. And that really, to me, that's the spirit and the community is what's so fantastic about New York. Everything else, I don't know. I could take or leave all the pigeons, the rats, the mice in my apartment. But,
so let me ask you this. Who would you consider your jazz heroes?
Oh, wow. I'm going to have to say that, first and foremost, I have to say Yusuf Lateef, who was a mentor to me. And I think that for all of the people that I kind of look to in jazz and in music in general, the one thing about them is that they're great musicians, but they're also great people. And I think with Dr. Lateef, like, he was just this really amazingly generous person, and soft-spoken, and just his presence, the way he was in the world, kind of communicated so much. And you can hear that in his music, and you can also see it in his painting as well, which he also did. So he's a huge influence. And I would say that in jazz in general, what I try to look to is to actually just look at other disciplines and other people that are influential in the way that they live their lives, and try to take that into the music, because I think the music is a way of exploring ideas and can be revolutionary, at the forefront of, like I said, social movements.
So let's whittle this list down a little bit here. If you could get into a time machine, the Jazz DeLorean, so to speak, and go back in time and see a gig, where would you go? Who would you want to see?
I would love to be experiencing a Coltrane performance live with this classic quartet with Jimmy Garrison, Elvin Jones, and Nicole Tyner. But at the same time, I would also love to see Duke Ellington's band. That's probably the composer outside of me who want to do that, because I think that he wrote so specifically for every voice in his band. His band was a bunch of different voices that he wrote for, and so to see how that played out on stage. And he also was a really fascinating person.
Let me ask you this. What's the greatest thing about waking up every day for you?
Coffee.
There you go. Good answer.
That's kind of a snarky New York answer, probably, but I started drinking coffee again after I came back to New York. I think it's just, being grateful to be alive and being able to continue to suspend my disbelief in pursuit of the dream of a life in music.
What was it like the first time you gave your autograph out?
I think sort of strange, because it's kind of a weird idea, like, why would anybody want this? But I have to say that the time that sticks out the most in my mind was the second show I played at Yoshi's in support of my Live at Yoshi's album, my second album. There were two young girls who came up to me after the show, and they had newspaper clippings of the article about me in the paper, and they wanted me to autograph it in their CD, and I was just so blown away by that, and I thought, wow, this is so cool. I never had any, when I was in high school or that age, I never had any female mentors, so it's really touching to see that I could be that for someone else.
So you've dedicated your life to jazz. So tell me this, simple question, but it packs a punch. Why do you love jazz?
To me, jazz and improvised music is about great voices and total freedom of expression. So for me, the thing that draws me the most is that idea that it's a place where you can be fully yourself and almost in the best moments, like sort of almost channel something through you that isn't really about you at all. It's completely getting rid of being self-conscious and just playing with feeling and emotion. And that is something that you don't find in really any other music in that same way, where it's being created in the moment and has that just enormous power to touch people.
So let me ask you this. All of your fans that you play for, all of the crowds you play for have a perception of who you are. Your family has a perception of who you are. Your friends do. But who do you think you are?
It's funny when you said that. The way I heard it first was, who do you think you are?
But, yeah, that's my way of diffusing it, so it's not like, hey, who do you think you are?
It's funny because that, I think, tells me a lot about myself, and just hearing that. I'm on a constant journey of figuring that out, and sometimes it seems really clear, and I identify first as a saxophonist and composer and as an artist, and to me that just means that I'm trying to ask all the questions in life and not shy away from it.
So let's say we get together in 20 years and we talk again. My first question to you, like I started kind of in that MC Escher-ish kind of metaphor of looking into the ball, what has been going on lately? What are you going to want to tell me in, say, 10 to 20 years?
Let's see. I'm resisting the urge to have some sort of, to be like, I'm living on a vegan farm and, growing vegetables, which could happen too, I suppose. But I think that for me, it wouldn't be that much different than today, except that I would be performing a lot more and that I would be having a sustainable impact, meaning that instead of recording every 4 years or so, I would be recording every couple of years and consistently being challenged with new projects and also expanding my reach to, I've played in Europe before at the South Album Jazz Festival in 1980, but I'd like to be touring there with my own band and And so I think it's just having a sustainable life in the arts that keeps growing.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to a very special Neon Jazz interview series, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Sarah for her vision, her music, and her honesty. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store or visit theneonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.